Well, even before the pandemic cast its shadow over the Canadian jobs market, there was a strong sense that the future would look very different than the past, including a deeper push by business to automate any job they can. And now a new desire from workers for more from their employers may change the relationship permanently. Tricia Williams is a director of research evaluation and knowledge mobilization at the Future Skills Centre. Thanks for being with us.
Thanks so much for having me.
I want to start with the question of the extent to which we see automation. Obviously, when there aren't enough workers, you think, well, businesses will use this opportunity to automate. Are we seeing that? Are we seeing a big pickup, do you think, that you might expect? Or might that wait until we see something like a recession for it to happen?
I think undoubtedly we're seeing automation increase, and the pandemic was an opportunity, and certainly now labor shortages spur the investments in automation. But I don't think we have to think of this necessarily as a bad thing. You know, Canadian productivity has been lagging for several years compared to OECD counterparts, and this is really an opportunity to put people in positions where they can do their best work with the right skills, training, and supports.
We do hear so much, and we have for years, Tricia, it's why you exist, I bet, that there are shortages in skills, there are gaps, and we're not training enough people, and we try to import the right people, but even that's hard. How are we doing at solving that problem? Because as we increase, the technology and digitization of workplaces, we're going to need people who actually understand how that stuff works.
Yeah, we hear a lot about labor shortages right now, but we'd argue that there's actually a skill shortage, and there's likely to be a skill shortage for some time. The skill requirements of jobs are changing. Within 5 years, almost half of your technical skills are obsolete. So we are seeing a real pressing need to improve the training, the investment in skills, and not just when you are starting your career, but throughout your career, to keep investing in skills development.
Which I guess we could actually dial this back to, do you think young people are coming out of whatever level of education they have with the right foundation for the skills they need? Are we doing a pretty good job with high school grads, with bachelors at universities, of setting people up for the right skills?
Look, without a doubt, you spend enough time around young people, you can't help but be excited about the future. I am very optimistic about the skills and passion that young people bring. I do think that there's a need to innovate, and we're seeing that across the country. We're working closely with over 200 project partners to test and innovate around different ways to develop skills. For instance, we have 5 post-secondary institutions in Calgary working on transitioning people from oil and gas to technology sector jobs. That's a big innovation for post-secondary institutions, and I think we need to see more of that.
You know, one of the things that seems clear post-pandemic, whether it lasts is an open question, but that there are some jobs people are just less keen on doing. You know, we're seeing it in some service sectors, in the hospitality industry. The workers have evaporated, and we see all kinds of businesses worried about that. Are there things those businesses should be thinking about doing differently to attract the workforce back? And by that I mean, are there sort of innovations they could be using that would make the jobs more enjoyable to people and maybe higher paying?
Yeah, I think this is a great example of where automation could be a good thing. Are there ways in which we can automate the less attractive elements of a job? And also for employers to remember that it's not just about pay and benefits. A lot of times when you ask workers, what is a high quality job to you? It's about things like scheduling, flexibility, the predictability of their hours and their schedule. So I think workers and employers have a lot of things in their toolbox other than just pay and benefits.
I have to ask, because we're kind of staring down, an increasing assumption of maybe a mild recession, maybe a deep recession sometime in the next, who knows, year or so. Is that a time when companies do invest, or historically do they tend to just kind of stop all innovating and investment? Is that going to be bad for this trend?
I mean, it's a risk, right? We saw labor force participation decrease with the last labor force survey that came out not too long ago. So we know that this is a time where, we need to be really careful not to dial back too much, especially the investments in skills. We know that social and emotional skills are consistently rated by employers as something they have trouble finding, and yet we know that they're standing the test of time. These are going to be tremendous opportunities for us, especially as we think about climate change, the transition to a green economy, all of the ways in which we need to keep investing despite any potential recessionary concerns.
So good to have you with us, Tricia. Appreciate your time.
Thank you so much.
Tricia Williams is the Director of Research Evaluation and Knowledge Mobilization at the Future Skills Centre. Time for the takeaway, and when a healthy jobs market isn't that healthy. The headlines on employment in Canada don't leave a lot of room for doubt. Record low unemployment, more than 1 million positions that businesses would like to fill and can't. Sounds like an economy that's running full tilt. That's why we scratch our heads and try to picture how a recession might hit and how it might feel different this time. Unfortunately, the reality behind the headline numbers is a bit less rosy. No question that Canada recovered jobs lost in the pandemic. Trouble is, the vast majority of them are government jobs. In fact, with thanks to our friends at The Hub for crunching the numbers, private sector employment grew an anemic 0.5% between February 2020 and this past May. Meanwhile, public sector jobs grew 10.7%. And as much as those jobs are important, public sector jobs include teachers, nurses, police, and the vast apparatus required to run a government. They are still jobs that taxes pay for. The private sector is the source of those taxes. So having too many public sector jobs relative to private companies is a problem. At The Hub, they're calling it a G-shaped recovery, as in government. Now throw into the mix, most governments will have to rein in spending rather than keep it growing, and you know that job growth can't continue. It also lays bare a big problem, which is our private sector has not been the source of employment growth. In a healthy economy, we will need that to pick up. Oh, and the lack of available workers for private sector jobs, it's not a good look if that's because they're all employed by government. Let's not even get into the potential social problems of having a small pool of workers in the private sector who, on average, make less than government employees, supporting their salaries and benefits with the private sector taxes. My takeaway? Canada probably shouldn't get too smug about its jobs data until most of the jobs aren't created out of thin air by government. That's Taking Stock for this week. I'm Amanda Lang. Thanks for being with us.